So this is the new MG HS. In my opinion, it's got the potential to be the best MG so far. It looks decent, fashionable and modern, with a solid interior and great technology. But is it up to the standards of the established rivals? Well, I took a quick test drive during the official media launch event to find out. I didn't get much time with the car, so I'll put together a more in-depth review soon. For this video, we'll just concentrate on the main details, 0 to 100 test, and short POV test drive. Firstly, the new model is based on the 3rd generation Roe RX-5 from China, which debuted in 2022. That means some things have been removed compared with the predecessor, but it is bigger overall, sitting 14mm wider, 26mm longer, and 30mm is added to the wheelbase. As you can probably tell, this now goes for a swooping coupe-like roof profile, and the actual roof height is lowered by 30mm. You don't have to worry about diminished cabin space though, as this is bigger, or at least similar to the outgoing model in most areas. 3 variants are on sale in Australia, from the Vibe, Excite to the top Essence, which is what we're testing here. The Essence comes with plenty of features and luxuries, especially for this price, including dual screens across the dash, really quite nice seats in the front, although not as racy as the previous model seats, with soft leather-like trim. Passenger space is good and you don't really notice the lower roofline from inside, in the front at least, and looking forward. The centre console is a bit thicker now, but it does feel like it saps some storage and general sense of spaciousness. In the back, yeah, it still has heaps of legroom, enough to put it near the top of the class. And headroom is still good, as the roof doesn't start dropping down until after the rear bench. Climate vents, charging ports, and cup holders on a flip-down armrest make it a decent long-distance cruiser. Boot space is up from 463 litres to 507. Not only that, the shape of the boot area has been optimised so it should be more practical overall. There's a spare wheel under the floor and not one of those annoying repair kits, with some additional storage boxes. In Australia, the new model is launching with a turbo petrol engine initially. The plug-in hybrid will come later. It's a new engine, still 1.5 litres, but it now features a variable geometry turbocharger, and some other bits and pieces have been tweaked or changed. Power and torque is up a little bit, and it comes paired with a new wet type 7-speed dual clutch automatic. All petrol models are front-wheel drive. So, first impressions of the new MG HS. The first thing I notice is the interior is definitely much more refined than before. It's got that modern look with the horizontal elements all across the dash, the twin screens obviously. This is the Excite model that I'm in now, and yeah, very well equipped. Leather seats, or leatherette style seats, all across the dash here as well. It's kind of soft, even up on the top, it's pretty soft. It's not just scratchy plastic, just right at the front there, it's basic scratchy plastic, but along here it's kind of a rubbery feel. Yeah, it definitely feels like a modern, reasonably refined vehicle. This is not just a cheap and nasty one. Visibility is okay at the front. The bonnet drops right down, so it's very easy to see where you are and get that feel for where you're positioned on the road. The only sort of limiting area is through the side here. That mirror is high mounted and it's right up against the A-pillar. For my eyesight anyway, I'm pretty short, so it might be different for taller people. They could maybe see over the top, but yeah, from my position, that is right in the wrong spot. I've just got a tiny little gap there, so I could, you know, technically see whatever's there. If there's a vehicle there, I can see through that, but apart from that, that's a big blind spot for me. MG says it has applied lots more insulation around the wheel arches, around the boot area and the engine bay. And even just driving around the city here, I can feel that it is definitely quieter. It doesn't have that sort of tinny or echoey sound. Even as I'm talking, it's got nice cabin acoustics. The engine is turbocharged, so it's got a little bit of a bassy note to it, but we'll get it out onto the highway in a second. It does have a new wet type dual clutch transmission now, so they said they've tried to iron out some of that slingshot feel. And again, yeah, just driving in the city just here, applying a bit of power during traffic lights, I can feel that it's much more natural feeling. You don't have to wait for the clutch to take up. Just slow down a bit and just give it a little bit, so half throttle. Yeah, so it changes down much quicker than before. I remember the old HS, you'd put your foot halfway down and then about, you know, a good second or a second and a half later, it would change down, and then the engine response would be delayed as well. So you get this big twang effect as you're accelerating. And yeah, by the time the car's accelerating, you actually need to back off anyway. Whereas now it's definitely much more responsive. The Excite comes with the bigger 19-inch wheels. I can hear a bit of echoing just in the wheels as they're bouncing over the bumps. But this is a very ordinary road. Sydney roads in the city are yeah, just pretty much among the most terrible roads, I reckon, in the country, apart from, you know, outback country roads. So there's a lot of patchwork and joins and so on, and it's not crashing, it's not going booming over the little joins. It's what's going on now? Oh, over speeding. Focus on driving. So it does have a driver monitoring camera. That's just a part of the latest ANCAP rules, basically. It seems to be okay so far. Just now as we're speaking, it's just gone off a little bit. But yeah, I can move my hands around and so on, and I'm looking around, checking my blind spots, and it's not going off like crazy. It's actually seems like it's not too sensitive, which is good. This is just a short drive, so I'm not going to turn anything off. I'm just going to leave it as it is and just see how everything responds. It's not pulling me around in the lane either, even though I am getting close to the lane markings on the left. We'll try on this side. Yeah, it's not pulling me around, so that's good. I reckon these safety technologies are great, but if they're oversensitive or picking up, you know, false information, then they become pointless because you turn them off because they're just so frustrating. Whereas this seems like it's pretty good. It does look good on the road now too. It's got the full width tail light at the back, all LED lighting, and it does have that coupe style as well, which is all the fashion these days. I guess the main thing is that the boot space is not sacrificed. I don't quite understand coupe SUVs. I wouldn't buy one because if I want an SUV, I want the practicality. But it's good to see that even though this does have a coupe sort of profile to it, that boot space isn't compromised. So I've got the speed limit warning information a bit incorrect. It's saying it's 60 when clearly it's 80. It's just picked up that one then. So this uses the camera for the speed limit information. It's not integrated into the sat nav. It will rely on signs, but they have worked or tried to work out with local testing as well, tried to fine-tune it so it doesn't pick up, you know, signs on the back of the bus and so on, and then just keep flashing that same speed limit information. I also spoke to one of the engineers, and they said that as soon as you make a turn, so it resets the speed limit information as soon as you make a turn. As soon as the steering wheel goes around a certain number of rotations or a certain amount of degrees, the information resets. So even if you are driving through a car park and it's 5 kilometers an hour, for example, it should reset to a default setting once you pull out onto the street. It shouldn't just keep flashing 5 kilometers an hour. The steering feels pretty good. There's nothing really negative to say about it. I mean, it's just steering, but I've got a reasonable understanding of what the front tires are doing. There's a bit of body roll, but I'd expect that in a sort of comfort, budget-focused SUV like this anyway. Rear visibility is not the greatest. It does have a small rear windscreen and the seat headrests pop right up, and the D-pillar is quite thick. But it is, I mean, it's this pretty small vehicle or small mid-size SUV, so you can kind of use the mirrors to determine where the end of the vehicle is, I guess. But yeah, that rear windscreen is definitely pretty narrow, and I guess that's the sacrifice you have to make when you opt for these coupe style SUVs. We're on a hill at the moment, just stopped, and there's actually a really nice view of the Harbour Bridge right there and the Opera House. But yeah, I just want to test out this new wet type dual clutch transmission. I've got my foot on the brake, but I'm just going to release it. There's somebody behind me, but it's only another MG. It doesn't matter if I smash into that. Release the brake, it holds it, and then I can accelerate very smoothly. So there's no big slingshot twang again like the previous model, and like pretty much any vehicle that has a dual clutch transmission, or at least a dry type dual clutch transmission. This is it's easy. Yeah, I'll just do that again. So foot on the brake, take my foot off the brake. You've probably got a second or two before it releases the brake, the heel hold. Accelerate. Yeah, very smooth. just like a normal torque converter automatic pretty much. The driver's gauge cluster has been designed so it can't be viewed from the passenger side, which is handy if you've got a bit of a sensitive partner that is keeping an eye on your speed. They can't see how fast you're going. But first impressions, yeah, definitely much more refined than the old model, and not even just compared with the old model. It is just a more refined vehicle. Now competes, it pushes it up the rankings in my opinion compared with its rivals. Just the interior presentation, cabin acoustics, and that ride quality is good, although I think it will be a little bit soft for a mountain drive, but you know, that's the nature of these vehicles anyway. They're not really designed for tackling the mountains. It just might be a little bit soft compared with some rivals, I think. But over the bumps and so on in the city, yeah, it doesn't crash or bang. Again, good cabin acoustics. There's no echoing, bouncing, booming through the cabin. And that transmission, the powertrain, is definitely a lot smoother, a lot quieter as well. And it takes off more gently. Doesn't have that twang anymore. Look, this is a great sign of the evolution of MG in Australia. I know it keeps saying that it's from 1924 or whatever it is. It's not really. It's been around for 7 years or so in Australia as a modern company owned by SAIC in China. And look how far they've come. They've really stepped it up in just 7 years. If you look at Hyundai and Kia, you know, they took about 10 or even 15 years to get the products up to the standard back then, whereas now the standard is a lot higher, obviously, but this is coming very close to the standard of much of the rivals. There are a few design quirks, including this metallic trim across the top of the steering wheel. I don't think that's a good idea because during certain times of the day it's very reflective. You know, it goes straight into your eyeballs. Also, the power windows, there's only auto up for the driver, not the passenger's windows. And that means you lose the global close function. You used to be able to hold the lock button on the key and all the windows would go up.